it's Jess, and today I'm going to be talking about my Sounds Live Feels Live Soundcheck experience. If you haven't already watched my vlog from Sounds Live Feels Live Cincinnati a couple days ago, you should go do that. But I felt like I should make a separate video just for Soundcheck and talking about that because the events leading up to Soundcheck were extremely stressful. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So we got up around 5, left at 6, and then got there around 8:30. It was at Riverbend Music Center in Cincinnati, and we waited in line for about 3 hours in the hot sun, and someone went through and counted how many people were in line, and we were in the 30s. So we were really excited because we were either going to be first, if not definitely probably second row for soundcheck. And then all of a sudden around 11:30, after 3 hours of sitting in the hot sun, a bunch of girls towards the back of the line started running over to this little fenced off area, and we thought oh, maybe someone's getting here, they think someone's getting here and they're trying to see them. So we didn't really think that much of it, and then all of a sudden someone in front of us was like, oh, I think they're moving the sound check line. And so I had one of my sisters and my cousins sprint over while my other sister held our spot in the other line, and I went to go see what the heck was going on. And apparently there was a woman from Riverbend who was supposed to come out and tell everyone hey, we're gonna move the line over here a little bit so that we can file everyone into this other amphitheater so that you won't get wet when it starts raining. But the woman never did that. They hung up a little sign first, so everyone towards the back that had seen that sign just started running, and so all the people who had been there for several hours were now in the back of the line. And there were people in front of us who had been there since 4 a.m. We'd only been there since 8:30, but that's still 3 hours, and there were people who had just showed up 10 minutes ago that were now at the front of the line. And so we were very mad, obviously. I still had my sister save the spot in the one line because one of the other girls who was kind of in front of us said that they were going to try and figure out who had been the first 40 or so people in line and try and get it back in that order. So this whole time, I don't know what to do, and then I see that people's parents are complaining. The people whose parents had been waiting with them at the front of the line, their parents are complaining, and they are getting to go back up towards the front of the line, and they had this little gated off area where they were keeping the first 30 or 40 so people that they thought were the first 30 or so people that were there. My sister and my cousin told me to go complain to someone, and I couldn't tell who the heck I was supposed to complain to because there were probably 15 different employees from Riverbend just walking around and all these middle-aged women screaming at them. So I did what I thought was the logical thing and called inside to the receptionist to see exactly who I needed to talk to. And so she explained who the general manager was and told me to go find him. So I went and found him, and I waited for 4 or 5 middle-aged people to stop screaming at him. And while I was waiting, I saw that the people who had been right behind us in line, it was a mom and her 2 teenage daughters, were in the little caged off area of the first 30 or so people. And I was oh, they can definitely vouch for us. We talked to them in line, we were friends, we told them where the bathroom was, we're on good terms. So I was I can just use them to vouch for us when I get up to this old man. And so when all these people were done screaming at him, it was my turn to talk, and I calmly said, "Hi, I just spoke with the receptionist inside, and she told me to come find you." And he started screaming at me. He was "You need to go get back to the back of the line." And then I didn't know what to do, so I just walked away. But then another middle-aged woman came up and started screaming at him, and he listened to her. So he probably thought that I was a 13 or 14-year-old girl that was just trying to be annoying, but I am a 21-year-old adult who deserves to be respected. So that really pissed me off more than actually getting moved back, because I was trying to look on the bright side. I was we went from being 30-something to 150-something. That's really annoying, but we could be farther back. There are worse things that could happen. But the fact that that man yelled at me, but he was listening to all the people who were yelling at him when I was calmly talking to him, that made me so mad. And there were people in the little gated off area of the first 30 or something who had just shown up at 11:30 and skipped to the front of their line with their friends who had been there since 4 a.m. But just a piece of advice, don't save spots for people in line. Because one, it's obviously not fair to the people who are behind you that you're letting them skip in front of, but it's also not fair to you. Why would you get there at 4 a.m. and then have your friend be oh, I'm going to sleep in an extra 7 hours, I'll meet you at 11:30, but save me a spot? I would not let them do that. I would be so mad. It's different if, like, you're in a group of people and one person drops everyone off while they go to park the car. Or I know one time in line for a concert, I saved a spot for my friend because she had to go to a funeral. Like, those are different types of scenarios. But if your friend just wants you to save them a spot in line while they sleep in, just don't do it. That's so dumb. That's basically the same concept of, like, one person doing all of the work in a group project and then everyone else showing up the last second to put their names on it. Like, if you want to sleep in and show up at 11:30, you can have an 11:30 spot in line, not a 4 o'clock spot in line. So after this whole line switching fiasco, we were still 150 something in line, which I was okay with because we could have been farther back. And then they started filing us in like an hour later around 12:30, and this also made me mad because then it started pouring down rain after like 75 people had gotten in, and if we had been in the spot where we should have been in, we would have been into the amphitheater before it started raining, and we would have been dry, and instead we were soaking wet, and we only had one umbrella for the 4 of us, so that was a fun time, but eventually we dried. It was all okay. And then once we got into the little amphitheater to check in, we got these wristbands. You probably know that. If you're watching this video, there's like a 90% chance that you already know what you get. But you get this little wristband. And I was actually surprised because I bought this wristband when I saw them at Sounds Like Feels Live in Hershey. And I thought that the VIP one was going to be like the same smooth material. But it's actually kind of like rough. Like it gets caught on things. But yeah, it's still cool. And it doesn't come off. So I'll probably keep it on forever. You also get this exciting lanyard. So we got our lanyards and our bracelets, and then they filed us into this amphitheater, and a bunch of girls didn't realize, like, oh, this isn't the actual amphitheater that the concert's in, so they thought that those were the sound check seats, which they obviously were not because there was nothing on the stage. So then we sat in there for maybe 2.5 hours, and then they finally got everyone up and moved us over to another amphitheater, and this one they did in a extremely organized way, probably because they knew everyone else was still pissed at them for moving the line in such an unorganized way. So by the time we got over to Soundcheck, we ended up being the 6th row, but it worked out fine because the first 5 rows that were technically the pit were folding chairs, and so we were in the first row behind that was actual seats, and we were kind of on the end, so it worked out so that no one was in front of us, so we still ended up being basically first row. So once we got in there, it was fine. I mean, I was just still annoyed that that old man yelled at me. But other than that, it was a great time, and we were so close. And when they came out, it was, like, overwhelming. Because I'm like, oh my gosh, they're right there. This is intense. And it was so exciting. It was kind of sad, though, because I was so close to getting to ask them a question. I had watched several other videos where people had said, like, if you want to get a question asked, you need to make sure that your question is, like, creative and not really dumb and generic. And I was like, I work for a radio station. I interview artists all the time. I can come up with a creative question. So while we were online, I thought of a question. I was going to ask them what song they wish they had made a music video for, and like what the concept would be if they knew that. So these 2 girls were walking around the different sides of the amphitheater screening everyone's questions, and the one came to me and she screened my question, and people around me had actually said, like, oh, that's a really good question. So I didn't like want to get my hopes up, but I was kind of like, okay, I might have like a shot at getting my question asked since I know that's like a creative question, and people around me actually said like out loud, like, oh, that's a good question. So then during Soundcheck, there were probably like 3 questions left to be asked, and the girl came back to me and she asked me my question again, and I told her, and I got so excited because I was like, I might get to ask them a question, it's about to happen, and then she just walked away. So there's that. But I think if the other girl who was screening questions had been on our side, I might have gotten to ask one, because some of the other questions were so generic. Like, someone asked them if they could have a genie grant them any 3 wishes, what it would be, and someone asked them what their favorite song off the new Drake album was. So those were just very generic, and I thought mine was creative enough and it was about their music that it would be able to be asked, but I guess not. But it's okay because Soundcheck was still fantastic. It was just so cool having them right there. It was definitely worth like the $200 for the ticket and the Soundcheck to be that close and that like intimate of an experience with them. Like, it was so cool. Also, they sang If You Don't Know, which was really exciting because that's just one that they never do at like an actual show, so just being able to hear that live. And then I think they also sang Out of My Limit, maybe? I'm pretty sure that's what they sang. Also, I didn't notice this, but my sisters and my cousin told me this after the fact. We had this like nasty blanket that we took with us to sit on. It was like a Christmas blanket. It was clean when we got there, but after like sitting on the ground and then going through the rain, it was kind of ugly. And so when we got into sound check, we had like a metal railing in front of us, and so they laid it over the railing. And since we were basically front row and there was no one in front of us, I guess like 5 seconds of Summer could see the blanket, and they said that they're pretty sure Callum was like giving it a weird look for like 5 minutes. I didn't see it, but who knows. I mean, we did have a giant blanket drawing attention to us, so it's possible. So all in all, it was an amazing time, even though I got yelled at and was a little frustrated earlier in the morning. All ended up working out, and all in all, it was a fantastic experience. If you have not watched my Sounds Life Feels Life Cincinnati or my Sounds Life Feels Life Hershey vlogs, I will link them in the description below. Make sure to go watch those. If you like this video, make sure you go ahead and give it a thumbs up, and also go subscribe if you have not already. Thanks for watching, and stay gold.